This is 2 Maccabees chapter 3. While the holy city was inhabited in unbroken peace, and the laws were very well observed because of the piety of the high priest Onias and his hatred of wickedness, it came about that the kings themselves honored the place and glorified the temple with the finest presents, so that even Seleucus, the king of Asia, defrayed his own revenues, all the expenses connected with the service of the sacrifices. But a man named Simon of the tribe of Benjamin, who had been made captain of the temple, had a disagreement with the high priest about the administration of the city market. And when he could not prevail over Onias, he went to Apollonius of Tarus, who at that time was the governor of Coelesyria and Phoenicia. He reported to him that the treasury in Jerusalem was full of untold sums of money, so that the amount of the funds could not even be reckoned, and that they did not belong to the account of the sacrifices, but that it was possible for them to fall under the control of the king. When Apollonius met the king, he told him of the money about which he had been informed, and the king chose heliodorus, who was in charge of the affairs, and sent him with commands to the effect the removal of the aforesaid money. Heliodorus at once set out on his journey, ostensibly to make a tour of inspection of the cities of Coelesyria and Phoenicia, but in fact to carry out the king's purpose. When he had arrived at Jerusalem, he had been kindly welcomed by the high priest of the city. He told about the disclosure that had been made and stated why he had come, and he had inquired whether this really was the situation. The high priest explained that there were some deposits belonging to widows and orphans, and also some money of hyrcanus, the son of Tobias, a man of a very prominent position, and that it totaled in all 400 talents of silver and 200 of gold. To such an extent, the impious Simon had misrepresented the facts, and he said that it was utterly impossible that wrong should be done to those people who had trusted in the holiness of the place and in the sanctity of the inviolability of the temple, which is honored throughout the whole world. But Heliodorus, because of the king commands which he had said that this money must in any case be confiscated for the king's treasury. So he set a day and went into the direct inspection of these funds. There was no little distress throughout the whole city, and the priests prostrated themselves before the altar in their priestly garments and called toward heaven upon him who had given the laws about deposits, and he should keep them safe for those who had deposited them. To see the appearance of the high priest was to be wounded at heart, for his face and the change in his color disclosed the anguish of his soul. For terror and bodily trembling had come over the man, who plainly showed to those who looked at him the pain lodged in his heart. People also hurried out of their houses in crowds to make general supplications, because of the holy place was about to be brought into contempt. Women, girded with sackcloths under their breasts, thronged in the streets. Some of the maidens who were kept indoors ran together to the gates and some of the walls, while others peered out of the windows. And, holding up their hands to heaven, they all made an entreaty. There was something pitiable in the prostration of the whole polis and the anxiety of the high priest in his great anguish. While they were calling upon the Almighty Lord that he would keep what he had been entrusted safe and secure for those who had entrusted it, Heliodorus went on with what had been decided. But when he arrived at the treasury with his bodyguard, then and there the sovereign of spirits and of all authority caused so great a manifestation that all who had been so bold as to accompany him were astounded by the power of God. They became faint with terror, for there appeared to them a magnificently caparised horse, with a rider of frightening mien, M-I-E-N, and it rushed furiously at Heliodorus, struck at him with its front hoofs. Its rider was seen to have armor and weapons of gold. 2 young men also appeared to him, remarkably strong, gloriously beautiful, splendidly dressed, who stood on each side of him and scourged him continuously, inflicting many blows on him. When he suddenly fell to the ground with deep darkness came over him, his men took him up and put him on the stretcher and carried him away. This man who had just entered the aforesaid treasury with a great ratoon and all his bodyguard was now unable to help himself. And they recognized clearly the sovereign power of God. While he lay prostrate, speechless, because of the divine intervention and deprived of any hope of recovery, they praised the Lord who acted marvelously for his own place, and the temple which a little while before was full of fear and disturbance was now filled with joy and gladness now that the Lord Almighty had appeared. Quickly, some of Heliodorus' friends asked Onias to call upon the Most High and to grant life to the one who is lying at his last breath. And the high priest, fearing that the king might get the notion of some foul play has been perpetrated by the Jews with regards to Heliodorus, offered sacrifice for the man's recovery. While the high priest was making the offering of atonement, the same young men appeared again to Heliodorus, dressed in the same clothing, and they stood and said, "Be very grateful to Onias the high priest, since for the sake the Lord has granted you your life. And see that you, who have been scourged by heaven, report to all the men the majestic power of God." Having said this, they vanished. Then Heliodorus offered sacrifice to the Lord and made a great vow to the Savior of his life. Having bidden Onias farewell, he marched off with his forces to the king. He bore testimony to all men of the deeds of the supreme God, which he had seen with his own eyes. When the king asked Heliodorus what sort of person would be suitable to send on another mission to Jerusalem, he replied, "If you have any enemy or plotter against your government, send him there, for you will get him back thoroughly scourged, if he escapes at all. For there certainly is about the place some power of God. For he who has his dwelling in heaven watches over that place and brings it aid, and he strikes and destroys those who come to do it injury." This was the outcome of the episode of Heliodorus and the protection of the treasury.